Getting More, How to Be a More Persuasive Person in Work and in Life by Stuart Diamond. The following questions serve as reminders of the key lessons in the book, emphasizing the importance of understanding interests, managing emotions, setting priorities, uncovering hidden values, finding common ground, exploring creative solutions, building trust, leveraging effective communication, and remaining open-minded and flexible in the negotiation process to create value for all parties involved. 1. What are the interests and needs of all parties involved in the negotiation? 2. What emotions are driving the decision-making process for each party? 3. What are the priorities and goals of each party in the negotiation? 4. Are there any hidden or overlooked values that can be uncovered through probing questions? 5. How can I effectively understand the perspective of the other party and find common ground? 6. What potential trade-offs or concessions can be made to create value for all parties? 7. Are there any creative solutions or alternative options that can be explored to maximize value? 8. How can I build trust and rapport with the other parties to create a positive negotiation environment? 9. What communication techniques can I use to effectively uncover and leverage hidden value? 10. How can I remain open-minded and flexible during the negotiation process to adapt and find more value? Answer key at the end of the video. Stuart Diamond, the author of Getting More, How to Be a More Persuasive Person in Work and in Life, has a background and expertise in the field of negotiation and persuasion. He is a negotiation expert, professor, and consultant with extensive experience in various industries and international relations. Diamond is a former associate director of the Harvard Negotiation Project and has taught negotiation at the Wharton Business School of the University of Pennsylvania for over 20 years. He has also conducted negotiation and communication training for numerous organizations, including Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, and non-profit organizations. Diamond's expertise in negotiation and persuasion is reflected in his book Getting More, which offers practical strategies, techniques, and insights on how to improve one's negotiation skills and achieve better outcomes in various areas of life. Chapter title summary. Chapter 1, Why Getting More Matters, introduces the concept of getting more and explains why it is essential in various aspects of life, including work and personal relationships. Chapter 2, The Core of Getting More, Finding More Value, discusses the importance of uncovering hidden or overlooked value in any situation and provides strategies for identifying and creating value in negotiations. Chapter 3, Finding the Zone of Possible Agreement, ZOPA, explains the concept of Zone of Possible Agreement, ZOPA, and how to identify it in negotiations to reach mutually beneficial outcomes. Chapter 4, How to Persuade. The Diamond Conversation presents the Diamond Conversation Framework, a step-by-step approach for effective persuasion, and provides practical techniques for building rapport, understanding needs, and influencing others. Chapter 5, The 10 Questions for Finding More Value, introduces 10 key questions to uncover value in any negotiation, including understanding interests, emotions, and priorities of all parties involved. Chapter 6, How to Deal with Difficult People, provides strategies for handling difficult people and challenging situations in a persuasive manner, including dealing with emotions, managing conflicts, and building trust. Chapter 7, How to Make Concessions, discusses the art of making concessions in negotiations, including when and how to do so strategically to achieve better outcomes. Chapter 8, Relationships and Persuasion, explores the role of relationships in persuasion, including how to build and maintain effective relationships for long-term success. Chapter 9, How to Deal with Deadlocks, presents strategies for overcoming deadlocks and impasses in negotiations, including reframing, finding common ground, and creating innovative solutions. Chapter 10, Time and Persuasion, discusses the role of time in negotiations and how to use time as a persuasive tool to create urgency, leverage deadlines, and manage deadlines effectively. Chapter 11, How to Make the Best Decisions, provides strategies for making effective decisions in negotiations, including understanding decision-making biases, analyzing risks, and maximizing outcomes. Chapter 12, How to Make the Most of Your Power, explores the concept of power in negotiations and how to leverage different sources of power to influence others effectively. Chapter 13, Getting More in Life, applies the principles of getting more to various aspects of life, including personal relationships, career, and overall well-being. Provides a final summary and conclusion. 1. Value, the worth, benefit, or advantage that can be gained from a negotiation or interaction. 2. Zone of Possible Agreement, ZOPA, the range of possible outcomes or solutions that are acceptable to both parties in a negotiation. 3. Diamond Conversation, a step-by-step framework for effective persuasion, focusing on building rapport, understanding needs, and influencing others. 4. 10 Questions for Finding More Value, a set of key questions aimed at uncovering hidden or overlooked value in a negotiation, including understanding interests, emotions, and priorities of all parties involved. 5. Difficult people, individuals who pose challenges in negotiations due to their behaviors, attitudes, or perspectives. 6. Concessions, giving up something in a negotiation to achieve a better outcome or create goodwill. 7. Relationships, the connections, interactions, and dynamics between individuals that can impact negotiations. 8. Deadlocks, impasses or situations where no progress is being made in a negotiation. 9. Time, the factor of time in negotiations, including deadlines, urgency, and time management. 10. Decision-making, the process of making choices or reaching conclusions in negotiations, taking into account biases, risks, and outcomes. 11. Power, the ability or influence that one party has over another in a negotiation, which can come from various sources such as expertise, status, or resources. 12. Getting more in life, applying the principles of the book to various aspects of life beyond negotiations, including personal relationships, career, and overall well-being. Key concepts and strategies. Summary. Value: understanding the worth, benefit, or advantage that can be gained from a negotiation or interaction. Zone of possible agreement, ZOPA, identifying the range of possible outcomes or solutions that are acceptable to both parties in a negotiation. Diamond conversation: a step-by-step framework for effective persuasion, focusing on building rapport, understanding needs, and influencing others. 10 questions for finding more value: a set of key questions aimed at uncovering hidden or overlooked value in a negotiation, including understanding interests, emotions, and priorities of all parties involved. Difficult people: strategies for dealing with individuals who pose challenges in negotiations due to their behaviors, attitudes, or perspectives. Concessions: techniques for giving up something in a negotiation to achieve a better outcome or create goodwill. Relationships: understanding the connections, interactions, and dynamics between individuals that can impact negotiations and how to manage them effectively. Deadlocks: strategies for overcoming impasses or situations where no progress is being made in a negotiation. Time: understanding the role of time in negotiations, including managing deadlines, urgency, and time-related dynamics. Decision-making: techniques for making informed choices or reaching conclusions in negotiations, taking into account biases, risks, and outcomes. Power: understanding the sources of power and how to leverage them in negotiations, including expertise, status, and resources. Getting more in life: applying the principles and strategies from the book to various aspects of life beyond negotiations, including personal relationships, career, and overall well-being. Value: the worth, benefit, or advantage that can be gained from a negotiation or interaction. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled among rolling hills, there lived a young girl named Maya. Maya was known for her keen sense of value. She had a knack for spotting hidden opportunities and extracting the utmost benefit from them. One day, Maya heard that the village was in need of a new bridge to connect two neighboring communities. The existing bridge had been damaged in a recent storm, and the villagers were struggling to travel between the two areas. The village leaders were in a dilemma as they lacked the necessary resources to build a new bridge. Maya, with her sharp mind and keen negotiation skills, decided to take matters into her own hands. She approached the village leaders and offered her assistance. She proposed a plan to gather resources from the villagers, including their skills, labor, and materials, to build the bridge collectively. She explained how this would not only save costs but also create a sense of community involvement and ownership. Maya's persuasive arguments and visionary approach convinced the village leaders, and they agreed to her proposal. She organized the villagers into teams, assigned roles and responsibilities, and set a timeline for the bridge construction. She negotiated with local merchants for discounted materials and convinced skilled craftsmen to volunteer their services. With her determination and leadership, Maya oversaw the entire process, ensuring that everyone's efforts were utilized optimally. She motivated the villagers and kept their spirits high, despite the challenges they faced along the way. Her ability to spot and leverage the value in every negotiation and interaction proved invaluable. Finally, after weeks of hard work, the new bridge was completed. The villagers rejoiced as they could now travel freely between the two communities, improving their livelihoods and strengthening their bonds. The village leaders and villagers alike praised Maya for her exceptional negotiation skills and her unwavering commitment to creating value for everyone. Maya's story soon spread far and wide, and she became renowned as a master negotiator and a symbol of value creation. Her skills and contributions were not only limited to building bridges but also extended to other aspects of village life, from resolving disputes to forging mutually beneficial partnerships. In the end, Maya's legacy lived on as she continued to inspire others with her unwavering belief in the power of value and the positive impact it could have on individuals and communities. Her story became a timeless reminder of the importance of recognizing and maximizing the worth, benefit, and advantage that can be gained from every negotiation or interaction. Zone of Possible Agreement, ZOPA, the range of possible outcomes or solutions that are acceptable to both parties in a negotiation. Once upon a time, in a bustling marketplace, two merchants, Ollie and Ben, found themselves in a heated negotiation over a rare gemstone. Ollie had discovered the gemstone in a distant land and had brought it to the marketplace to sell, while Ben was a gem collector who had been searching for a gemstone of this quality for years. As they sat across from each other, it became clear that Ollie and Ben had different expectations about the value of the gemstone. Ollie was seeking a high price, while Ben was determined to secure a bargain. However, amidst the tension, they both recognized that there was a zone of possible agreement, ZOPA, a range of possible prices that could be acceptable to both of them. They began their negotiation, each presenting their arguments and making counteroffers. Ollie argued that the gemstone was one of a kind and worth every penny of his asking price. Ben countered with his research on similar gemstones in the market, showing that Ollie's price was above the market value. As the negotiation continued, they gradually moved closer to each other, exploring various options and finding common ground. They discussed different payment terms, potential trade-offs, and creative solutions. They both realized that reaching an agreement within this ZOPA would benefit both of them. After several rounds of negotiation, Ollie and Ben finally arrived at a mutually acceptable price that fell within the ZOPA. They shook hands, exchanged pleasantries, and concluded the deal with smiles on their faces. Both parties felt satisfied with the outcome, knowing that they had reached an agreement that was fair and beneficial to both of them. As they parted ways, Ollie and Ben reflected on the importance of understanding and leveraging the zone of possible agreement in their negotiations. They realized that by identifying the range of acceptable outcomes for both parties, they were able to find a common ground and achieve a win-win solution. From that day on, Ollie and Ben continued to do business with each other, building a trusted relationship based on mutual respect and understanding. They also shared their experience with others in the marketplace, spreading the knowledge of the zone of possible agreement and its significance in successful negotiations. The story of Ollie and Ben became a legend in the marketplace, with many merchants learning from their example and applying the concept of ZOPA in their own negotiations. It served as a reminder that understanding and leveraging the zone of possible agreement could lead to mutually beneficial outcomes, creating value and building positive relationships in the world of business and beyond. Diamond Conversation, a step-by-step framework for effective persuasion, focusing on building rapport, understanding needs, and influencing others. In the bustling streets of Chicago in the 1920s, Johnny the Snake Santoro was known as one of the shrewdest and most feared mobsters in the city. He had built an empire through his ruthless ways and was always on the lookout for new opportunities to expand his criminal enterprise. One day, Johnny received a tip about a valuable diamond that was up for auction at a high-end speakeasy. He knew that acquiring this diamond would be a game-changer for his business, but he also knew that he would need to use all his persuasive skills to win the auction. Johnny put on his best suit and made his way to the speakeasy, where he found himself in a room filled with other mobsters, all vying for the prize diamond. He knew that it wouldn't be an easy task to convince the auctioneer and outbid his rivals. As the auction began, Johnny kept a keen eye on his opponents, carefully observing their body language and listening to their conversations. He knew that building rapport was the first step in his Diamond Conversation, a step-by-step framework for effective persuasion that he had honed over the years. He struck up conversations with the other bidders, charming them with his smooth talk and charismatic presence. He learned about their needs and motivations, understanding what drove them to bid on the diamond. He used this information to his advantage, tailoring his approach to each individual, and influencing them with calculated moves. As the bids went higher, Johnny remained calm and focused. He used his understanding of human psychology and persuasion techniques to strategically place his bids, gradually inching closer to the winning bid. He knew that timing was crucial, and he waited for the perfect moment to make his move. In the final moments of the auction, it came down to Johnny and his biggest rival, Tony the Bulldog Caruso. They engaged in a fierce bidding war, with Tony trying to intimidate Johnny with his aggressive demeanor. But Johnny remained composed, employing his Diamond Conversation techniques to stay in control. In the end, Johnny's persistence paid off. He won the auction and secured the precious diamond. Much to the disappointment of his rivals, he walked away with a triumphant smile, knowing that he had successfully used his persuasion skills to achieve his goal. The news of Johnny's successful acquisition spread quickly among the mobster circles, earning him a reputation as a master persuader. He continued to use his Diamond Conversation framework in his dealings, building alliances, and expanding his criminal empire. In time, Johnny's reputation grew, and he became a formidable force in the mobster world. He was admired for his ability to influence others and achieve his objectives through his persuasive skills. His diamond conversation became legendary, and many sought his advice on how to be more effective in their own negotiations and dealings. Johnny's success in the 1920s mobster world was a testament to the power of effective persuasion and the value of mastering the art of the diamond conversation. It was a skill that he honed over time and used to his advantage, navigating the treacherous waters of the criminal underworld with finesse, and leaving a lasting legacy as one of the most persuasive mobsters of his time. 1. What are the interests and needs of all parties involved in the negotiation? 2. What emotions are driving the decision-making process for each party? 3. What are the priorities and goals of each party in the negotiation? 4. Are there any hidden or overlooked value that can be uncovered through probing questions? 5. How can I effectively understand the perspective of the other party and find common ground? 6. What potential trade-offs or concessions can be made to create value for all parties? 7. Are there any creative solutions or alternative options that can be explored to maximize value? 8. How can I build trust and rapport with the other parties to create a positive negotiation environment? 9. What communication techniques can I use to effectively uncover and leverage hidden value? 10. How can I remain open-minded and flexible during the negotiation process to adapt and find more value? 10 questions for finding more value, a set of key questions aimed at uncovering hidden or overlooked value in a negotiation, including understanding interests, emotions, and priorities of all parties involved. 1. What are the interests and needs of all parties involved in the negotiation? 2. What emotions are driving the decision-making process for each party? 3. What are the priorities and goals of each party in the negotiation? 4. Are there any hidden or overlooked value that can be uncovered through probing questions? 5. How can I effectively understand the perspective of the other party and find common ground? 6. What potential trade-offs or concessions can be made to create value for all parties? 7. Are there any creative solutions or alternative options that can be explored to maximize value? 8. How can I build trust and rapport with the other parties to create a positive negotiation environment? 9. What communication techniques can I use to effectively uncover and leverage hidden value? 10. How can I remain open-minded and flexible during the negotiation process to adapt and find more value? 10 questions for finding more value, a set of key questions aimed at uncovering hidden or overlooked value in a negotiation, including understanding interests, emotions, and priorities of all parties involved. In the dimly lit back room of a speakeasy, Tony the Shark Rossi sat across from Vincent the Viper Marino, two notorious mob bosses known for their ruthlessness and cunning. They were in the midst of a high-stakes negotiation over the distribution of illegal liquor in the city during the roaring 1920s. Tony, known for his sharp wit and strategic mind, decided to employ his 10 questions for finding more value to gain an advantage in the negotiation. He carefully crafted his questions, aimed at uncovering hidden or overlooked value in the deal. "Vincent, let's cut to the chase," Tony said, lighting a cigar and leaning back in his chair. "What are your interests in this deal? What do you hope to gain from it?" Vincent, known for his quick temper, raised an eyebrow but couldn't help but be intrigued by Tony's approach. He begrudgingly shared his interests, revealing that he wanted a larger share of the profits and a better distribution network. Tony then delved deeper, asking about Vincent's emotions and priorities. He asked about Vincent's concerns, fears, and aspirations, carefully listening to his responses and taking notes. As the negotiation continued, Tony used his questions to understand Vincent's perspective and find common ground. He proposed creative solutions, suggesting alternative options that could benefit both parties. He remained calm and composed, using his questions to steer the conversation in his favor. Vincent, initially resistant, found himself gradually opening up to Tony's approach. He realized that Tony's questions were helping him uncover hidden value and see the negotiation from a different perspective. In the end, Tony's meticulous use of his 10 questions for finding more value paid off. He and Vincent reached a mutually beneficial agreement, with both parties walking away satisfied. The deal was a success, and Tony earned a reputation as a master negotiator in the mobster circles. As he left the speakeasy, Tony couldn't help but smile to himself. His strategic use of the key questions had unlocked hidden value in the negotiation, giving him the upper hand in the cutthroat world of 1920s mobsters. He knew that his 10 questions for finding more value would continue to be his secret weapon in future negotiations, helping him navigate the dangerous waters of the mobster underworld with finesse and success. Difficult people, individuals who pose challenges in negotiations due to their behaviors, attitudes, or perspectives. In the smoky back alleys of the bustling city, Frankie the Fixer Santoro, a renowned mobster in the 1920s, found himself facing a formidable opponent. a notorious figure known simply as the Bulldog. The Bulldog was infamous for his stubbornness and aggressive demeanor, and negotiations with him were always a daunting task. Frankie knew that dealing with difficult people like the Bulldog required finesse and strategy. He couldn't let his emotions get the best of him, as the Bulldog was known for his hot temper and impulsive decisions. As the two met in a secluded speakeasy, tensions ran high. The Bulldog wasted no time in barking his demands, showing little willingness to listen to Frankie's proposals. Frankie took a deep breath and reminded himself of his years of experience in negotiation. He knew that understanding the Bulldog's behaviors, attitudes, and perspectives would be key to finding a solution. He started by actively listening to the Bulldog's grievances and concerns, trying to see things from his perspective. He acknowledged his emotions and showed empathy towards his situation, diffusing some of the tension in the room. Frankie then used his persuasive skills to present alternative options that could benefit both parties. He remained calm and composed, not letting the Bulldog's aggressive demeanor affect him. He appealed to the Bulldog's interests and needs, finding common ground in areas of mutual gain. Despite the Bulldog's initial resistance, Frankie persisted with his strategic approach. He used his negotiation skills to steer the conversation towards a win-win solution, focusing on creating value for both parties. After hours of intense negotiations, Frankie's efforts paid off. The Bulldog finally softened his stance and agreed to a compromise that satisfied both parties. Frankie walked away with a sense of accomplishment, knowing that he had successfully navigated the challenges of dealing with a difficult person in a high-stakes negotiation. In the end, Frankie's ability to understand and navigate the Bulldog's behaviors, attitudes, and perspectives had been crucial in achieving a favorable outcome. He learned that dealing with difficult people required patience, empathy, and strategic thinking, and he had once again proven himself as a skilled negotiator in the cutthroat world of 1920s mobsters. Concessions: giving up something in a negotiation to achieve a better outcome or create goodwill. In the dark and gritty streets of New York City in the 1920s, Joey the Shark Marino, a ruthless mobster, found himself in a precarious situation. He was caught in a heated negotiation with his rival, Salvatore the Snake Lombardi, over control of a lucrative speakeasy. The tension was palpable as Joey and Salvatore glared at each other across the dimly lit room. Both were known for their cunning and shrewd negotiation skills, and concessions were expected to be hard-fought. Joey knew that concessions were inevitable in negotiations, but he was determined to make calculated moves to achieve the best outcome. He carefully weighed his options, considering the risks and rewards of each concession. As the negotiations dragged on, Joey realized that Salvatore was a formidable opponent. He had to give up some ground to gain leverage and create goodwill. He made strategic concessions, offering to split the profits evenly and share control of the speakeasy. Salvatore, known for his quick temper, initially scoffed at Joey's concessions and demanded more. But Joey remained composed and confident. He patiently explained the benefits of their collaboration and how it would lead to a more significant overall gain. After several intense rounds of back and forth, Joey and Salvatore finally reached a compromise. They shook hands, sealing the deal, and Joey walked away with a sense of satisfaction. He had successfully used concessions as a tool to achieve a better outcome in a high-stakes negotiation. In the end, Joey understood that concessions were a strategic move, and giving up something in the negotiation would help him create goodwill, build trust, and ultimately achieve his goal of gaining control of the speakeasy. He realized that concessions were not a sign of weakness, but a calculated tactic to achieve a favorable outcome in the competitive world of 1920s mobsters. Relationships, the connections, interactions, and dynamics between individuals that can impact negotiations. In the roaring 1920s, Frankie the Fixer Santoro was a suave and sophisticated mobster known for his smooth negotiation skills. He had built a reputation for being able to charm his way into advantageous deals and maintain relationships with key players in the underworld. One day, Frankie found himself in a precarious situation. He needed to strike a deal with Vincent the Viper Russo, a notorious mob boss who controlled the illicit gambling operations in the city. The Viper was known for being ruthless and cunning, and Frankie knew he needed to tread carefully. Frankie knew that relationships were crucial in negotiations. He had spent years cultivating a network of allies and acquaintances in the mob world, and he understood the power of connections. He used his charm and charisma to build rapport with the Viper, knowing that a positive relationship would give him an edge in the negotiation. As the negotiation progressed, Frankie utilized his understanding of relationships to his advantage. He carefully navigated the dynamics between him, the Viper, and their respective associates. He listened attentively, understood the Viper's needs and priorities, and used his interpersonal skills to influence the outcome in his favor. Despite the Viper's initial tough stance, Frankie remained patient and persistent. He tapped onto the relationship he had built over the years and found common ground. He highlighted the mutual benefits of their cooperation and presented a win-win solution. In the end, the Viper was impressed by Frankie's negotiation skills and the relationship he had built. They reached a mutually beneficial agreement, and Frankie walked away with a lucrative deal that expanded his operations and boosted his reputation in the mob world. Frankie knew that relationships were not just about making deals in the moment, but about cultivating long-term connections that could impact future negotiations. He understood that building and maintaining relationships was a key factor in his success as a mobster in the 1920s, and he continued to leverage his interpersonal skills to navigate the complex dynamics of the underworld and come out on top. Deadlocks, impasses, or situations where no progress is being made in a negotiation. In the gritty underworld of the 1920s, Tony the Shark Marino was a feared and respected mobster known for his ruthlessness and cunning tactics. He had risen through the ranks of the mob with his shrewd negotiation skills, but he faced a daunting challenge when he found himself in a deadlock with a rival gang led by Johnny the Hammer Thompson. Tony and Johnny had been vying for control over the illegal alcohol trade in the city for months, and tensions were at an all-time high. Despite numerous attempts at negotiation, they had reached a deadlock, unable to find common ground or make any progress. Tony was known for his determination and strategic thinking. He refused to back down or accept defeat. He knew that deadlocks were dangerous in the mob world, as they could easily escalate into violence and bloodshed. He needed to find a way to break the impasse and come out on top. Tony decided to change his approach. Instead of resorting to his usual aggressive tactics, he took a step back and assessed the situation from a different perspective. He realized that emotions were running high on both sides, and egos were getting in the way of finding a solution. Using his negotiation skills, Tony devised a plan. He reached out to a mutual friend, Frankie the Negotiator Santoro, known for his expertise in resolving disputes among mobsters. Frankie agreed to mediate the negotiation between Tony and Johnny, and they set up a meeting in a neutral location. During the negotiation, Frankie used his diplomatic skills to create a conducive environment for dialogue. He facilitated open communication and encouraged both parties to express their interests and concerns without interruptions or threats. He helped them understand each other's perspectives and emotions, and he used his persuasive abilities to find common ground. As the conversation progressed, Tony and Johnny realized that their mutual goal was to maximize their profits from the illegal alcohol trade. They both wanted to avoid unnecessary violence and bloodshed, which would disrupt their operations and attract unwanted attention from law enforcement. With Frankie's guidance, Tony and Johnny were able to find creative solutions and make concessions. They found common ground and devised a plan to divide the territory and profits in a mutually beneficial way. They reached an agreement that satisfied both parties and broke the deadlock that had seemed insurmountable. The resolution not only prevented unnecessary violence but also allowed Tony and Johnny to coexist in the city and continued their operations without attracting too much attention. It was a win-win outcome that demonstrated the power of effective negotiation skills and the importance of breaking deadlocks to achieve favorable results in the mob world of the 1920s. Tony learned that sometimes, stepping back, seeking assistance, and finding common ground were key strategies to overcome even the toughest deadlocks in negotiations. Time. The factor of time in negotiations, including deadlines, urgency, and time management. In the bustling streets of 1920s Chicago, Jimmy the Ace Thompson was a renowned mobster known for his charm, charisma, and clever negotiation tactics. He was always on top of his game. But one day he found himself in a challenging situation that tested his negotiation skills to the limit. Jimmy had been trying to strike a deal with Salvatore the Snake Russo, a rival mob boss, to secure a lucrative gambling operation. However, negotiations had been dragging on for weeks, and Jimmy was feeling the pressure of time. He knew that time was a crucial factor in negotiations, and he needed to find a way to leverage it to his advantage. With the deadline for the deal looming closer, Jimmy decided to take a bold approach. He arranged a meeting with Salvatore at a speakeasy in the heart of the city, knowing that Salvatore was notorious for his love of gambling and partying. He arrived early and made sure to set the tone by displaying his confidence and control over the situation. As the negotiations started, Jimmy skillfully used the factor of time to his advantage. He emphasized the urgency of the situation, highlighting the potential risks and losses if the deal fell through. He managed the time effectively, keeping the negotiations focused and productive, and avoiding unnecessary delays. However, Salvatore was not an easy opponent. He was known for his stubbornness and shrewd negotiation skills. He tried to stall and delay, hoping to gain an advantage. But Jimmy remained persistent, constantly reminding Salvatore of the looming deadline and the consequences of missing it. As the clock ticked, Jimmy employed various negotiation tactics, including making concessions, using persuasive language, and appealing to Salvatore's interests and emotions. He knew that time was a valuable bargaining chip, and he used it to keep the pressure on Salvatore and push for favorable terms. Finally, with minutes to spare before the deadline, Salvatore conceded. He agreed to the terms proposed by Jimmy, realizing that time was running out, and he didn't have many options left. The deal was sealed, and Jimmy walked away victorious. securing the gambling operation he had been vying for. The story of Jimmy's negotiation success spread quickly throughout the mob circles, earning him a reputation as a master negotiator who knew how to effectively use the factor of time to his advantage. He learned that time could be a powerful tool in negotiations, and managing it strategically could lead to favorable outcomes even in the high-stakes world of 1920s mobsters. Decision-making, the process of making choices or reaching conclusions in negotiations, taking into account biases, risks, and outcomes. In the roaring 1920s, Frankie the Fixer DeLuca was a notorious mobster known for his quick thinking and sharp decision-making skills. He was feared and respected in the underworld, and his reputation as a shrewd negotiator had earned him many profitable deals. One day, Frankie found himself in a high-stakes negotiation with the rival gang leader, Tony the Blade Rossi. The two were vying for control over the lucrative bootlegging operations in the city, and tensions were running high. It was a crucial moment that would determine the future of their respective businesses. As the negotiation progressed, Frankie knew that every decision he made would have far-reaching consequences. He carefully considered each move, weighing the risks and outcomes, and taking into account his biases and emotions. He was aware of his own impulsive nature and the need to stay level-headed in the face of pressure. Frankie used his keen observation skills to gauge Tony's intentions and tactics, and he made calculated decisions accordingly. He was quick to identify Tony's attempts at manipulation and deception, and he countered them with strategic moves of his own. At times, the negotiation seemed deadlocked, with both parties unwilling to budge. But Frankie remained composed, employing his decision-making skills to break through the impasses. He analyzed the situation from different angles, explored creative solutions, and used his intuition to make calculated risks. The negotiation went on for hours, with each decision made by Frankie inching him closer to his desired outcome. He had to navigate through Tony's threats and intimidation, but he didn't falter. He stayed focused on the long-term gains and kept his eye on the ultimate goal. Finally, after much back and forth, Frankie made a bold decision that turned the tide in his favor. He proposed a mutually beneficial arrangement that appealed to Tony's interests and diffused attention. Tony saw the value in the proposal and agreed to the terms, sealing the deal. Frankie walked away from the negotiation victorious, having made critical decisions at every turn and secured a favorable outcome. His decision-making skills had been his key weapon in the negotiation, allowing him to navigate through challenges and achieve his objectives in the cutthroat world of 1920s mobsters. As word spread of Frankie's negotiation prowess, his reputation as the Fixer grew stronger, and he continued to thrive in the mob underworld. He had learned that effective decision-making was a critical element of successful negotiations, and it had helped him rise to the top of the game. Power, the ability or influence that one party has over another in a negotiation, which can come from various sources such as expertise, status, or resources. In the bustling streets of 1920s Chicago, Vincent the Don Giovanni was a mobster who wielded power with an iron fist. He was known for his unmatched influence and ability to manipulate negotiations to his advantage. One day, Vincent found himself in a tense negotiation with a rival gang leader, Salvatore the Enforcer Russo. Both were vying for control over the lucrative speakeasy business in the city, and the stakes were high. Vincent knew that power was a critical factor in negotiations, and he had cultivated various sources of it over the years. He had expertise in the illegal alcohol trade, with connections and resources that gave him an edge. He also had a reputation as a fearsome figure, with a high status in the criminal underworld that commanded respect and instilled fear. As the negotiation unfolded, Vincent used his power to assert dominance. He leveraged his expertise to present compelling arguments and countered Salvatore's proposals with ease. He used his status to intimidate and influence, making it clear that he held the upper hand. Salvatore, on the other hand, felt the weight of Vincent's power bearing down on him. He struggled to match Vincent's knowledge and resources, and found himself at a disadvantage. Vincent's power was palpable, and it created an imbalance in the negotiation. Vincent continued to exert his power throughout the negotiation, making strategic moves that pushed Salvatore into a corner. He controlled the tempo of the negotiation, setting deadlines and using time to his advantage. He also played his resources skillfully, showcasing his connections and wealth to further solidify his position. Despite Salvatore's attempts to resist, Vincent's power proved to be too overwhelming. Salvatore eventually conceded to Vincent's terms, knowing that he had little choice in the face of such power dynamics. Vincent walked away from the negotiation victorious, having used his power to assert dominance and secure a favorable outcome. His reputation as the Don grew stronger, and his grip on the speakeasy business tightened. Vincent's understanding of power and its role in negotiations had been instrumental in his success. He knew that power could be a potent tool when used wisely, and he had mastered the art of wielding it to his advantage in the cutthroat world of 1920s mobsters. Getting more in life, applying the principles of the book to various aspects of life beyond negotiations. including personal relationships, career, and overall well-being. In the midst of the roaring 1920s, Joey the Fixer Marino was a mobster known for his shrewd negotiating skills. He was always on the lookout for opportunities to get ahead in life, not just in business, but in all aspects of his existence. One day, Joey stumbled upon a book titled Getting More in Life. Intrigued, he started reading and soon realized that the principles outlined in the book could be applied to various aspects of his life beyond negotiations. Joey was determined to use these principles to his advantage and get more out of life. He began by applying the book's teachings to his personal relationships. Joey had always been distant from his family, but he realized that he could use the principles of building rapport and understanding needs to mend his strained relationship with his younger brother, Tony. He reached out to Tony, took the time to understand his perspective, and made concessions to show his willingness to repair the relationship. Over time, their bond grew stronger, and Joey found fulfillment in rekindling the familial ties he had neglected for so long. In his career, Joey used the principles of the book to negotiate better deals with his business partners. He approached negotiations with a strategic mindset, asking the 10 questions for finding more value and using his power to assert his position. His newfound negotiation skills led to more lucrative business deals and increased profits, elevating his status in the mobster world. Joey also realized the importance of time and negotiations and life in general. He learned to manage his time effectively, setting deadlines and prioritizing tasks to make the most of his days. This newfound time management skill allowed him to balance his work and personal life better, leading to improved overall well-being. As Joey continued to apply the principles of getting more in life in various aspects of his existence, he saw positive changes unfold. His personal relationships flourished, his career thrived, and he found a newfound sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in life. Joey the Fixer Marino had come to understand that getting more in life wasn't just about negotiations in the criminal underworld, but it extended to all facets of his being. He had learned that applying the principles of the book had unlocked new opportunities and helped him create a more fulfilling and successful life in the bustling 1920s era. 10 questions for finding more value, a set of key questions aimed at uncovering hidden or overlooked value in a negotiation, including understanding interests, emotions, and priorities of all parties involved. What are the interests and needs of all parties involved in the negotiation? In the smoky back room of a speakeasy, mobsters from rival gangs gathered for a high-stakes negotiation. The air was thick with tension as each side eyed the other warily, knowing that any misstep could result in bloodshed. At the center of the negotiation was the dispute over the lucrative smuggling routes that ran through the city. The two main parties involved were Vinny the Hammer Caruso and Frankie the Snake Santoro, leaders of their respective gangs. They had a long-standing rivalry, but both knew that a peaceful resolution would be beneficial to their interests. As the negotiation began, Vinny and Frankie squared off, each trying to assert their dominance. But Joey the Negotiator Rossi, a seasoned mobster known for his skills in mediation, stepped in to facilitate the process. He understood that to find a resolution, he needed to identify the interests and needs of all parties involved. Joey started by asking open-ended questions, probing to understand the motivations of Vinny and Frankie. He listened carefully as they expressed their desires for control over the lucrative smuggling routes, the need for increased profits, and the protection of their respective territories. Joey then dug deeper, asking about their personal interests and needs beyond the immediate negotiation. He learned that Vinny had aspirations of expanding his operations to other cities, while Frankie was looking to secure a steady income for his family. Joey also noted the underlying emotions, such as pride and the desire for respect, that were driving their actions. With this information, Joey was able to identify common ground between Vinny and Frankie. He realized that both parties wanted to maximize their profits, protect their territories, and achieve their long-term goals. Joey used his skills in persuasion to highlight the potential benefits of a peaceful resolution, including increased profits and reduced risks of violence. He also facilitated creative brainstorming, suggesting alternative routes that would benefit both parties and meet their interests. Slowly, the tension in the room began to ease as Vinny and Frankie realized that they had more in common than they thought. After hours of negotiation, a breakthrough was reached. Vinny and Frankie agreed to a mutually beneficial solution, dividing the smuggling routes in a way that would benefit both of their gangs. They also agreed to a code of conduct to avoid future conflicts and maintain a peaceful business relationship. As the negotiation concluded, Joey watched with satisfaction as both parties left the speakeasy with smiles on their faces. He knew that by understanding the interests and needs of all parties involved, he had helped them find a resolution that was beneficial to everyone. In the end, the negotiation not only resolved the immediate dispute over the smuggling routes but also paved the way for future collaborations and increased profits for both Vinny and Frankie. Joey's skills in identifying and addressing the interests and needs of all parties had successfully averted a violent confrontation and created a win-win outcome in the cutthroat world of 1920s mobsters. What emotions are driving the decision-making process for each party? In the bustling streets of Chicago during the 1920s, mobsters ruled the underground world with an iron grip. Among them were Tony the Bull Santoro and Louis the Knife Rossi, two notorious crime bosses who were vying for control over the city's illegal gambling operations. Tony, a seasoned mobster with a reputation for his hot temper and fierce determination, had built his empire from scratch. He was known for his no-nonsense approach to business and his willingness to do whatever it took to maintain his power. Louis, on the other hand, was a cunning and calculated strategist. He had risen through the ranks with his shrewd decision-making and careful planning. He was always looking for an angle to gain an advantage over his rivals. As tensions rose between Tony and Louis, they found themselves at odds over the control of a prime gambling den. Both were unwilling to back down, and the stakes were getting higher with each passing day. They decided to meet in a smoky back room of a speakeasy to negotiate a resolution. The negotiation started off with Tony and Louis trying to assert their dominance, each determined to come out on top. Tony's emotions were fueled by anger and a sense of pride, as he couldn't bear the thought of losing his hard-earned territory. He was determined to make decisions based on his emotions, not wanting to show any sign of weakness. Louis, on the other hand, approached the negotiation with a calm and calculated demeanor. He was strategic in his decision-making, evaluating risks and outcomes. He was driven by the desire to expand his operations and increase his profits. As the negotiation progressed, emotions ran high. Tony's anger and pride clouded his judgment, leading him to make impulsive and aggressive decisions. He was unwilling to compromise, determined to hold on to what he believed was rightfully his. On the other hand, Louis remained composed, leveraging his strategic decision-making skills. He understood that emotions could cloud judgment and was careful to stay level-headed. He made calculated concessions, offering compromises that would benefit both parties. As the negotiation continued, it became apparent that Tony's emotions were driving him towards a deadlock. He was unwilling to see beyond his own perspective and was blinded by his emotions. Louis, on the other hand, was able to recognize the emotions at play and use them to his advantage. In a surprising turn of events, Louis appealed to Tony's pride, recognizing that Tony did not want to be seen as weak in front of his peers. Louis proposed a solution that would allow Tony to save face while also achieving his long-term goals. Tony, realizing that his emotions were clouding his judgment, took a step back and reconsidered. In the end, Tony and Louis reached a resolution that was mutually beneficial. They agreed to share the control of the gambling den, allowing both parties to maintain their reputation and profits. The decision-making process for Tony was driven by his emotions of anger and pride, while Louis's emotions were kept in check, allowing him to make calculated and strategic decisions. As they left the speakeasy, Tony and Louis shook hands, acknowledging the power of emotions in the decision-making process. They both realized that understanding and managing emotions in negotiations was crucial for achieving successful outcomes in the cutthroat world of 1920s mobsters. What are the priorities and goals of each party in the negotiation? In the seedy underworld of 1920s New York City, mobsters fought tooth and nail for control over the illegal liquor trade during Prohibition. One such mobster was Johnny the Snake Russo, a cunning and ambitious crime boss who was always on the lookout for new opportunities to expand his operation. Johnny had set his sights on a lucrative speakeasy that was being run by Joey the Hammer Marino, a rival mobster known for his ruthless reputation. Joey had built a thriving business and was not willing to part with it easily. So when Johnny approached Joey with an offer to buy the speakeasy, tensions quickly rose as the negotiation began. Johnny's priority was to secure the speakeasy as part of his plan to dominate the illicit liquor trade in the city. He saw it as a prime location and a significant step towards achieving his long-term goal of becoming the most powerful mobster in the city. He was determined to acquire the speakeasy at any cost and was willing to use his resources and influence to get his way. On the other hand, Joey's priority was to protect his turf and maintain his status as a prominent player in the illegal liquor trade. The speakeasy was his prized possession, and he was not willing to part with it without a fight. He was determined to hold on to his territory and his reputation as a tough and formidable mobster. As the negotiation progressed, it became clear that Johnny and Joey had conflicting priorities and goals. Johnny was willing to make concessions, offering a hefty sum of money to buy the speakeasy. However, Joey was unwilling to budge, determined to hold on to his turf and maintain his reputation. The negotiation quickly turned into a deadlock, with neither party willing to give in. Johnny was frustrated as he couldn't understand why Joey was being so stubborn. He was tempted to use his power and influence to force Joey into selling the speakeasy, but he realized that might lead to a violent turf war, which would be detrimental to both parties. In a surprising turn of events, Johnny decided to step back and reassess the situation. He realized that his approach of using power and influence was not going to work in this negotiation. He needed to understand Joey's priorities and goals better to find a solution. Johnny approached Joey with a different mindset, Seeking to understand his perspective, he engaged in active listening and asked open-ended questions to uncover Joey's concerns and motivations. Through the conversation, Johnny realized that Joey's priority was not just the money but also his reputation and status as a mobster. Armed with this new insight, Johnny proposed a solution that addressed both his and Joey's priorities. He offered to buy the speakeasy but also promised to give Joey a stake in his own operation, ensuring that Joey's reputation and status would be maintained. Joey, seeing that his goals were being addressed, agreed to the deal. In the end, Johnny and Joey reached a mutually beneficial agreement. Johnny acquired the speakeasy, and Joey retained his reputation and status as a prominent mobster. The negotiation was successful because Johnny took the time to understand the priorities and goals of both parties, and was willing to find a solution that met their interests. As they shook hands and parted ways, Johnny realized the importance of understanding the priorities and goals of each party in a negotiation. He learned that it was not just about power and influence, but also about empathy and finding common ground. In the cutthroat world of 1920s mobsters, understanding the motivations of others was key to achieving successful outcomes. Are there any hidden or overlooked value that can be uncovered through probing questions? In the roaring 1920s, the Prohibition era was in full swing, and the mobsters of New York City were vying for control over the lucrative illegal liquor trade. Among them was Tony the Shadow Moretti, a suave and sophisticated mobster known for his sharp wit and cunning negotiation skills. One day, Tony received an unexpected invitation from Frank the Bulldog DeLuca, a rival mobster, to meet at the speakeasy downtown. Tony was intrigued and decided to accept the invitation, knowing that Frank was known for his shrewd and tough negotiation tactics. As Tony arrived at the speakeasy, he was greeted by Frank, who was known for his intimidating presence. The two mobsters sat down in a dimly lit booth, eyeing each other warily. Frank got straight to the point, offering Tony a deal to buy a small warehouse on the outskirts of the city that was rumored to be a hideout for rival gang members. Tony was interested, but he knew that Frank was a seasoned negotiator, and there might be hidden value or overlooked aspects of the deal that he needed to uncover. Tony decided to employ his probing skills and asked Frank a series of strategic questions. He inquired about the location of the warehouse, the condition of the building, and the reasons behind Frank's interest in selling it. He also asked about any potential legal or law enforcement issues associated with the property. As Frank answered the questions, Tony carefully listened and observed for any inconsistencies or hidden information. He noticed that Frank seemed hesitant when asked about the condition of the building and evaded questions about legal issues. Tony persisted with his probing questions, pushing Frank for more details. He asked about the history of the warehouse and any past incidents that might have occurred there. He also asked about the neighboring properties and their potential impact on the value of the warehouse. As the conversation continued, Tony's probing questions began to reveal some inconsistencies in Frank's story. It turned out that the warehouse was not as valuable as Frank had initially claimed, and there were potential legal issues that he had failed to disclose. Armed with this information, Tony was able to renegotiate the deal and secure a more favorable price for the warehouse. Frank, realizing that his attempt to hide certain aspects of the deal had been uncovered, reluctantly agreed to the revised terms. In the end, Tony walked away with the valuable property at a discounted price, thanks to his skillful use of probing questions to uncover hidden or overlooked value in the negotiation. He realized that in the world of mobsters, nothing was as it seemed, and using probing questions was essential to uncovering the truth and getting the best possible outcome. As Tony left the speakeasy, he reflected on the importance of thorough questioning and not taking things at face value in negotiations. He knew that in the cutthroat world of mobsters, being able to uncover hidden or overlooked value could mean the difference between success and failure. How can I effectively understand the perspective of the other party and find common ground? In the bustling streets of 1920s Chicago, mobsters ruled the underworld with their illicit activities. Among them was Johnny the Shark Marino, a cunning and ruthless mobster known for his sharp mind and strategic negotiation skills. One day, Johnny found himself in a precarious situation. He had a dispute with another powerful mobster, Salvatore the Butcher Russo, over the control of a speakeasy that was generating hefty profits. The tension between the two mobsters was palpable, and it seemed like a showdown was imminent. However, Johnny knew that resorting to violence would only escalate the situation and potentially result in a bloodbath. He decided to take a different approach and find a way to understand Salvatore's perspective and reach a resolution through negotiation. Johnny contacted Salvatore and requested a meeting at a neutral location. Despite initial reluctance, Salvatore agreed to the meeting, and the two mobsters met in a secluded warehouse on the outskirts of the city. As they sat down, Johnny took a deep breath and reminded himself to keep a calm and composed demeanor. He knew that understanding the perspective of the other party was crucial in finding common ground. He started the negotiation by asking Salvatore about his motivations and concerns. He listened attentively and refrained from interrupting or passing judgment. He also shared his own perspective, being careful to use neutral and non-confrontational language. As the conversation progressed, Johnny realized that Salvatore had similar concerns about the speakeasy's profitability and the potential risks of a violent confrontation. They both shared a common interest in maximizing their profits and avoiding unnecessary bloodshed. Johnny then proposed a solution that could address both parties' interests. He suggested a joint venture where they could work together to manage the speakeasy and split the profits. He outlined a plan that would ensure fair distribution of profits and minimize the risks of violence. Salvatore was initially skeptical, but Johnny remained patient and continued to emphasize the benefits of their collaboration. He highlighted how their combined expertise and resources could lead to greater profits and stability in the long run. After some back and forth, Salvatore finally agreed to the proposal. He realized that Johnny's perspective made sense and that a peaceful resolution would ultimately benefit both of them. With the agreement in place, Johnny and Salvatore shook hands, signaling the end of their negotiation. They left the warehouse with a sense of relief, knowing that they had found common ground and averted a potentially deadly conflict. In the end, Johnny learned the importance of understanding the perspective of the other party in negotiations. By remaining calm, listening attentively, and finding common ground, he was able to reach a resolution that benefited both parties and avoided unnecessary violence. He realized that in the world of mobsters, effective negotiation skills were just as crucial as physical prowess, and finding common ground was a powerful tool for conflict resolution. What potential trade-offs or concessions can be made to create value for all parties? In the roaring 1920s, the city of New York was a hotbed of illegal activities, with mobsters vying for power and control. Among them was Tony the Bulldog Moretti, a feared and respected mob boss known for his cunning tactics and shrewd negotiation skills. One day, Tony found himself in a precarious situation. He had a dispute with another notorious mobster, Vito the Snake Rossi, over the distribution of alcohol in a lucrative territory. The tension between the two mobsters was escalating, and it seemed like a violent showdown was inevitable. Tony, however, was known for his strategic thinking and wanted to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. He decided to reach out to Vito and propose a negotiation to resolve their differences. The meeting was set at a speakeasy, and both Tony and Vito arrived with their trusted advisors in tow. The atmosphere was tense, with each party wary of the other's intentions. Tony started the negotiation by laying out his priorities and goals. He explained that he wanted to find a solution that would benefit both parties and create value for their respective organizations. He emphasized the potential for cooperation and the mutual benefits of a resolution. Vito, however, was skeptical and defensive. He insisted on maintaining his current control over the territory and was unwilling to make any concessions. Tony understood that concessions would be necessary to create value for both parties. He proposed a trade-off where they could split the territory, with each party having control over specific areas. He highlighted how this arrangement would allow them to expand their operations without directly competing with each other and risking unnecessary violence. Vito was initially resistant, but Tony remained persistent. He pointed out the potential benefits of the trade-off, including increased profits and reduced risks of violence. He also acknowledged Vito's concerns and offered some concessions to address them. After much negotiation and back and forth, Tony and Vito finally reached an agreement. They agreed to split the territory, with each party having control over designated areas. They also set up a system for revenue sharing and cooperation to maximize their profits. As they shook hands to seal the deal, Tony and Vito realized that the trade-offs and concessions they made had created value for both parties. They had avoided unnecessary bloodshed and found a resolution that allowed them to achieve their goals without directly competing with each other. In the end, Tony learned the importance of making trade-offs and concessions in negotiations to create value for all parties involved. He understood that finding a win-win solution was possible, even in the cutthroat world of mobsters, and that cooperation and strategic thinking were powerful tools for resolving conflicts and achieving mutual benefits. Are there any creative solutions or alternative options that can be explored to maximize value? In the bustling streets of Chicago during the 1920s, the mob ruled with an iron fist. Among the most notorious gangsters was Salvatore Salvatelli, known for his sharp wit and quick thinking. One day, Sal found himself in a tricky situation when his illegal gambling den was threatened with a potential raid by the police. Determined to find a way out, he gathered his trusted associates for a meeting in his dimly lit office. As Sal pondered his options, he realized that the traditional routes of bribing the police or fighting them head-on would not yield the desired results. He needed to come up with a creative solution to maximize the value for his business and avoid getting shut down. Sal called upon his top advisor, Frank, to brainstorm ideas. They discussed various options, from relocating the den to creating a diversion to lure the police away. But none of these seemed feasible. Then, Sal had a stroke of genius. He remembered that the police were always in need of information to crack down on rival mobsters. He realized that he could use this to his advantage by offering them valuable information in exchange for turning a blind eye to his gambling den. Sal and Frank devised a plan to gather information on rival gangs and their illegal activities. They used their contacts in the underworld to gather intel and compiled a dossier of incriminating evidence against their rivals. They then set up a secret meeting with the police chief and presented him with the information. Sal made a compelling case for how shutting down his gambling den would deprive the police of valuable leads on other criminal activities in the city. The police chief was intrigued and saw the potential value in Sal's proposal. He agreed to spare Sal's gambling den in exchange for his continued cooperation in providing information on other criminal activities in the city. Sal and Frank breathed a sigh of relief as they walked out of the police station. The creative solution had paid off, and Sal's gambling den remained operational, providing him with a steady stream of income. Sal learned that sometimes, traditional solutions may not always work in negotiations. By thinking outside the box and exploring alternative options, he was able to maximize the value for his business and achieve his goals. As the news spread through the underworld, Sal gained a reputation for his shrewd negotiation skills and creative problem-solving. He continued to thrive in the mob world, always looking for new ways to stay ahead of his rivals and come out on top in any negotiation. How can I build trust and rapport with the other parties to create a positive negotiation environment? In the dark and gritty streets of New York City during the roaring 1920s, Vincent "Vinny" Rossi was a rising star in the mob. Known for his sharp mind and smooth talking, Vinny was always looking for ways to expand his influence and increase his profits. One day, Vinny found himself in a precarious situation. He needed to strike a deal with a rival gang to secure a steady supply of bootlegged alcohol. However, he knew that building trust and rapport with the rival gang would be crucial to create a positive negotiation environment. Vinny called upon his most trusted advisor, Tony, to help him devise a plan. They discussed various ways to establish trust with the rival gang, including leveraging personal connections and finding common ground. After careful consideration, Vinny decided to take a more direct approach. He arranged a meeting with the leader of the rival gang, Mickey the Hammer Malone, in a neutral location. Vinny was well aware of Mickey's reputation for being tough and ruthless, but he was determined to make the negotiation a success. During the meeting, Vinny focused on building rapport with Mickey. He listened attentively to Mickey's concerns and shared his own perspective openly and honestly. He also found common ground by discussing their mutual dislike for a rival mobster who posed a threat to both of their businesses. Vinny also made sure to be transparent and forthcoming about his own intentions and goals in the negotiation. He emphasized the potential benefits of a mutually beneficial partnership and how it could lead to increased profits for both parties. To further strengthen the trust, Vinny offered concessions that demonstrated his willingness to compromise and find a win-win solution. He suggested a fair distribution of profits and shared valuable information about the rival gang's operations that could benefit Mickey's gang. Mickey was initially skeptical, but Vinny's sincerity and genuine efforts to build trust gradually won him over. They continued to negotiate, and with each interaction, their relationship improved. After several rounds of negotiations, Vinny and Mickey finally reached a mutually beneficial agreement. They sealed the deal with a handshake, and Vinny left the meeting feeling satisfied with the outcome. In the following months, Vinny and Mickey's gangs worked together smoothly, and their profits soared. Vinny learned that building trust and rapport with the other party in a negotiation was crucial to creating a positive negotiation environment and achieving a successful outcome. Vinny's reputation as a skilled negotiator spread through the mob circles, and he gained respect and admiration for his ability to establish trust and create mutually beneficial partnerships. He continued to use these skills in his future negotiations, further cementing his position as a prominent mobster in the city. What communication techniques can I use to effectively uncover and leverage hidden value? In the smoky back room of a speakeasy in Chicago, Joey the Snake Santoro sat across the table from Frankie the Blade Bianchi, a rival mobster. They were there to negotiate a delicate truce after a recent turf war that had left both their gangs reeling. Joey knew that uncovering hidden value would be key to reaching a favorable agreement, and he had a plan. He carefully chose his words and employed communication techniques to gain insight into Frankie's priorities and leverage hidden value. First, Joey used active listening to show genuine interest in Frankie's perspective. He made eye contact, nodded in agreement, and refrained from interrupting. He asked open-ended questions to encourage Frankie to share more about his concerns and needs. As Frankie spoke, Joey paid close attention to not just the words, but also the underlying emotions and motivations. He picked up on subtle cues in Frankie's body language and tone of voice to better understand what was driving his decision-making process. Next, Joey used the technique of reframing to uncover hidden value. He rephrased Frankie's statements to clarify his interests and needs, and to highlight areas of potential agreement. This helped to shift the focus from positions to underlying interests, creating room for creative solutions. Joey also used empathy to establish a connection with Frankie. He acknowledged Frankie's perspective and emotions, and shared his own experiences and concerns. This helped to build rapport and create a more collaborative atmosphere, where both parties felt heard and understood. As the negotiation progressed, Joey used a combination of active listening, reframing, and empathy to uncover and leverage hidden value. He asked probing questions that encouraged Frankie to reveal more about his priorities and goals. He offered concessions that addressed Frankie's concerns while still protecting his own interests. He also proposed alternative options that could benefit both parties, such as a joint business venture in a new territory. Frankie, initially guarded and skeptical, gradually warmed up to Joey's communication techniques. He realized that Joey was genuinely interested in finding a solution that would benefit both of them, and that there was hidden value in exploring alternative options. After several rounds of negotiations, Joey and Frankie finally reached a mutually acceptable agreement. They shook hands, and the tension in the room eased. Both Joey and Frankie walked away feeling satisfied with the outcome, knowing that they had effectively uncovered and leveraged hidden value through effective communication techniques. Joey's reputation as a skilled negotiator grew in the mob circles, and he gained a reputation for his ability to uncover hidden value and reach mutually beneficial agreements. He continued to use these communication techniques in his future negotiations, building trust and creating value in the mob world, one deal at a time. How can I remain open-minded and flexible during the negotiation process to adapt and find more value? In the bustling streets of New York City during the 1920s, Salvatore Salvaluca, a rising mobster, found himself in a precarious negotiation with a rival gang led by Tony the Hammer Marino. The tension was palpable as both parties sat at a dimly lit table in a hidden speakeasy, trying to reach a compromise. Sal knew that remaining open-minded and flexible during the negotiation process was crucial to adapt and find more value. He was determined to strike a deal that would benefit his gang and minimize potential conflicts. As the negotiation began, Tony started by making aggressive demands, trying to assert his power and intimidate Sal. But Sal remained calm and composed, keeping an open mind and staying focused on the bigger picture. He listened attentively to Tony's positions and concerns, acknowledging them without immediately rejecting them. He refrained from reacting impulsively or defensively, knowing that it could hinder the negotiation process. Instead, Sal asked probing questions to gain a deeper understanding of Tony's underlying interests and needs. Sal also remained flexible in his approach. He considered different scenarios and potential trade-offs, exploring various options to create value for both parties. He was willing to adapt and find creative solutions that could satisfy both his own gang's priorities and Tony's gang's goals. Throughout the negotiation, Sal kept an open mind, willing to consider different perspectives and ideas. He was willing to compromise on certain issues while staying firm on others that were critical to his gang's interests. He maintained a flexible attitude, willing to adjust his stance as needed to reach a mutually beneficial agreement. Despite the challenges and moments of tension, Sal's open-mindedness and flexibility paid off. He found common ground with Tony on certain issues and proposed alternative options that could benefit both parties. He remained composed throughout the negotiation process, never losing sight of his gang's priorities. In the end, Sal and Tony reached a tentative agreement that would minimize conflicts and pave the way for a more peaceful coexistence between their gangs. Both parties walked away feeling satisfied with the outcome, knowing that they had been able to adapt and find more value through open-mindedness and flexibility. Sal's reputation as a shrewd negotiator grew among the mob circles, and he became known for his ability to remain open-minded and flexible in negotiations. He continued to apply these principles in his future dealings, navigating the complex world of mobsters with strategic finesse, and securing favorable outcomes for his gang. Answer key from questions in page 1. 1. What are the interests and needs of all parties involved in the negotiation? In any negotiation, it is crucial to understand the interests and needs of all parties involved. What are their motivations? What are they seeking to achieve? Understanding their interests and needs allows you to align your negotiation strategy accordingly. 2. What emotions are driving the decision-making process for each party? Emotions play a significant role in negotiations. People may be driven by fear, anger, frustration, or other emotions that impact their decision-making. It is important to recognize and manage emotions, both yours and the other parties, to ensure clear and rational decision-making during the negotiation process. 3. What are the priorities and goals of each party in the negotiation? Understanding the priorities and goals of each party helps in finding common ground and creating value. What do they value the most? What are their long-term goals? By identifying their priorities and goals, you can tailor your negotiation approach to align with them and achieve mutually beneficial outcomes. 4. Are there any hidden or overlooked values that can be uncovered through probing questions? Probing questions are an effective tool to uncover hidden or overlooked values in a negotiation. By asking open-ended questions and actively listening to the responses, you may discover valuable information that can help in finding creative solutions and maximizing value for all parties involved. 5. How can I effectively understand the perspective of the other party and find common ground? Understanding the perspective of the other party is critical in a negotiation. By actively listening and empathizing with their point of view, you can identify common ground and areas of agreement. Building on these shared interests can lead to a more productive negotiation process. 6. What potential trade-offs or concessions can be made to create value for all parties? In a negotiation, trade-offs and concessions can be made to create value for all parties involved. It may involve giving up something in exchange for gaining something else. Identifying potential trade-offs or concessions can help in reaching mutually beneficial agreements that satisfy the interests of all parties. 7. Are there any creative solutions or alternative options that can be explored to maximize value? Thinking outside the box and exploring creative solutions or alternative options can often lead to maximizing value in a negotiation. By considering unconventional approaches and finding innovative solutions, you may uncover new opportunities that can benefit all parties involved. 8. How can I build trust and rapport with the other parties to create a positive negotiation environment? Building trust and rapport with the other parties is crucial in creating a positive negotiation environment. Trust is the foundation of successful negotiations, and it can be built through open and honest communication, integrity, and consistency. Establishing a positive relationship can foster cooperation and collaboration in the negotiation process. 9. What communication techniques can I use to effectively uncover and leverage hidden value? Effective communication is key to uncovering and leveraging hidden value in a negotiation. Active listening, asking probing questions, and clarifying information can help in gaining insights into the other party's interests and needs. Clear and persuasive communication can also help in presenting your own interests and proposals in a compelling manner. 10. How can I remain open-minded and flexible during the negotiation process to adapt and find more value? Remaining open-minded and flexible during the negotiation process is essential for adaptation and finding more value. Being willing to consider different perspectives, reevaluate priorities, and adjust your approach based on new information or changing circumstances can lead to better outcomes. It is important to maintain a flexible mindset and be open to exploring different options to optimize the negotiation process. Epilogue. As the smoke cleared and the tension dissipated, Tony and Frankie found themselves sitting across from each other at a small, dimly lit table in a speakeasy. The negotiations had been intense, but in the end, they had reached a compromise that satisfied both parties. Tony had managed to secure a steady supply of high-quality liquor for his speakeasies at a reasonable price, while Frankie had gained access to Tony's distribution network, expanding his reach in the city. It was a win-win situation, and both men were content with the outcome. Over time, Tony and Frankie had developed a mutual respect for each other's negotiation skills. They had come to understand each other's interests, needs, and priorities, and had found common ground despite their initial differences. They had learned to manage their emotions, communicate effectively, and leverage hidden value through probing questions and creative solutions. Their relationship had evolved beyond the negotiation table. They had built trust and rapport with each other, creating a positive negotiation environment based on open-mindedness and flexibility. They had even become friends, meeting for drinks and sharing stories about their adventures in the underground world of 1920s mobsters. The principles of negotiation that they had learned from the book Getting More by Stuart Diamond had not only helped them achieve success in their business dealings but had also extended to other aspects of their lives. They had applied the strategies and techniques to personal relationships, career decisions, and overall well-being, leading to better outcomes and improved relationships with others. As they toasted to their successful negotiation, Tony and Frankie reflected on how far they had come. They had learned that negotiation was not just about getting the most for oneself, but also about understanding the perspective of the other party, finding common ground, and creating value for all parties involved. With their newfound negotiation skills, Tony and Frankie continued to thrive in the 1920s mobster world, navigating challenges and seizing opportunities. They had come a long way from their initial confrontations, and their reputation as skilled negotiators had spread throughout the city. As they left the speakeasy, ready to face new challenges, Tony and Frankie knew that the lessons they had learned from Getting More would continue to guide them in their negotiations and interactions with others. They were confident that their newfound skills would serve them well, not only in their mobster dealings but also in all areas of their lives. They were determined to keep applying the principles of negotiation to get more in life, one negotiation at a time. And so, their story continued, with a newfound understanding and mastery of the art of negotiation. Component description title: Getting More, How to Be a More Persuasive Person in Work and in Life. Author Stuart Diamond. Subject matter: negotiation, persuasion. Background and expertise of the author. Stuart Diamond is a negotiation expert, professor, and consultant with extensive experience in various industries and international relations. He is a former associate director of the Harvard Negotiation Project and has taught negotiation at the Wharton Business School of the University of Pennsylvania for over 20 years. Key themes: practical strategies for improving negotiation skills, techniques for being a more persuasive person, application of negotiation principles in various aspects of life beyond work, focus on understanding interests, emotions, priorities, and communication in negotiation. Target audience: individuals seeking to improve their negotiation skills, professionals in business, management, sales, or leadership roles. Anyone interested in understanding human behavior and communication in negotiation. Structure: chapters covering different aspects of negotiation and persuasion. Practical examples, case studies, and anecdote, exercises and activities to apply concepts in real-life situations. Thought-provoking questions to prompt reflection and self-assessment. Practical tips and actionable insights for immediate application. Overall goal: to provide readers with practical strategies, techniques, and insights to improve their negotiation skills and achieve better outcomes in various areas of life, including work, personal relationships, career, and overall well-being.